Welcome to Just Healing, where we rediscover humanity in our conversations around trauma and celebrate the unique ways we love and heal. I'm one of your Season 2 co-hosts, Dr. Greg Cason. Trauma doesn't exist in a bubble, and healing shouldn't either. Let's listen, let's learn, let's heal.
You're here to tell your truth. All I was doing was saying, your perspective isn't wrong. I wasn't questioning his reality. I was saying, but this is mine, and I'm confident in how I feel about it. That's what's so great, is that when you feel powerful in your position, you can explain and express yourself in a way that's clear-headed. It's exactly the concept of this podcast. I just had an aha moment, breakthrough moment after 20-something years, and I'm immediately getting to share it with people tuning in. I feel great. I honestly feel great that this is happening right now.
Welcome to the Just Healing podcast for the organization Men Healing. We are diverse voices, embracing humanity in bold conversations, destigmatizing intersectionality of trauma, and celebrating the unique ways we heal. I'm Dr. Greg Cason. I'm a psychologist, and I am guest hosting for the next 6 shows. And I am here with one of my favorite people, Jake Hytken. And I want to read to you Jake's background because it's very impressive. Jake Hytken is a passionate advocate for disability rights and an expert in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. He's living with muscular dystrophy. He adopted a wheelchair in his teens, and it's sparking his lifelong commitment to accessibility in technology. His career is focused on scaling diversity and inclusion. And starting in 2024, this year, Jake is leading diversity and inclusion in Ginkgo Bioworks, an organism company that genetically engineers pharmaceuticals, consumables, plant life, and more. Jake has also developed global employee resource program, an ERG strategy with 28 global chapters at Snapchat. He also played a pivotal role in the Catalyzed Tech initiative, presenting it to the UK Parliament. And Jake's dedication has earned him international recognition in the disability rights community with policy, product, and brand work at Lyft, Airbnb, and Nike. And beyond his career, this is what's really cool. Jake studied with nonviolent protest. He studied nonviolent protest under the Reverend James Lawson and was mentored by international disability rights advocate or activist Judy Heumann, shaping his extracurricular activities. He's also an active hobbyist in the entertainment industry, auditioning for acting roles and consulting for diverse representation on and off screen. And one of Jake's most remarkable achievements is his solo backpacking trips, equipped with only a camera, his wheelchair, and a bag, embracing a playful spirit. He believes in the power of humor and lightheartedness in diverse media representation to break barriers and create inclusivity. Wow. Hello, Jake. Welcome.
Hello, Greg. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is really cool. When I was asked to do this, you were one of the first people I thought of because you have such a passionate voice, such diverse experience, and you're an expert in one of the hottest fields and one of the most controversial fields that we're currently dealing with today, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and belonging. I guess we've added another word. I didn't realize. So
We've got a few terms. We also have Jedi as an acronym, which is cool. Use the Force, you know?
That's a fun one too. Yes, I like that. So welcome. I really appreciate you being here. But this was what was odd because healing happens at any time. Right before we came on to do the podcast, you just had a very significant healing experience. So if you don't mind sharing with everyone something that just happened with you that breaks from all of this professional stuff we're talking about and really hit at your personal life and healing.
Yeah, it's the timing could not be more ironic or serendipitous. You know, I'm not one of these people that believes personally in stars aligning and energy and what are the odds. I just think that life happens. And so this is just a aha whoa moment that's gliding. In addition to my own physical disabilities in my life that has just been complex, one of those components is my daddy issues. And daddy issues stemming all the way back to when I was a kid. I have a father that exhibited some sort of mental, cognitive, behavioral differences than we'll say the norm. And that resulted in anger problems. But then when I was getting into my preteens and adolescence, they were having what appeared to be manic episodes. They were in and out of car chases, going to jail, getting caught with a bunch of substances. Their behavior was becoming erratic. And in that time, I was also going into a wheelchair. So finally, after I would say 3 years, starting about 9, 10, maybe we'll say at about 13, I decided to end my relationship with my father. And I had not spoken to him for about 14 years. And for my brother's sake, I knew it was hard on him who did maintain a relationship. And knowing that he was, going to be getting married and having kids, I decided that, this guy, whether I know him, like him or not, is going to be a part of my existence. And I was really fortunate to have a stellar mother and an amazing stepfather who stepped in to be dad. But that wasn't going to erase the fact that this guy was going to be part of my life. So starting in 2017, I opened that door and said, let's get together. And I joined him and some people for Thanksgiving. And to be honest, since 2017, it has not been smooth sailing because there were still these residual feelings that I was holding on to. Him wanting to just live in this past, this idyllic sort of, way that he remembers things. But the reality is that we each and all have our own lens that we remember things in. And my lens did not replicate his. And so it was really just stiff and not great. Well, unfortunately, my biological mother and my stepfather both have diseases. My mom has late stage Parkinson's, and my stepfather has Alzheimer's. And my priorities as an adult child is really them right now. And I was in town for my nephew's first birthday, and my biological father was just really trying to cling on and get as much as he wanted. And I just was like, I told him off in a text that was probably not my best move because I succumbed to anxiety and frustration that he was only focusing on what his needs were and not saying what was around. And I sent him a text saying, look, here's the deal. My priority is not you. My priority is focusing on the parents that raised me and their health stuff right now. And like, you need to be more respectful of those boundaries. But he responded with what started as a really understanding text, but ended on one of these sort of, but there's a lot of things that I need to tell you about that you just don't know. Like it's the reason you were kept away from me. And there's this lack of accountability that, my father has always had of not being accountable, that I chose to stay away because of his behaviors that he was exhibiting. Seeing my father go and get in car chases and go to jail, being in the car where he's driving erratically, me losing the ability to walk and needing to be carried upstairs at 12 years old. And he was up in his room getting high and not willing to help me get to the restroom or to bed. So these were real things that affected me. And so because I'm starting at my new job on Monday, I wanted him to know, and I decided to tell him. But I also felt before I told him, I need to acknowledge why I didn't call him for the last month and a half. And so in this purpose of this conversation, I laid it all out there. And I said, this is why I haven't called you, but this is also why we haven't connected since our reconnection in 2017. There are still behaviors of your own cognitive dissonance of how you understand, see the world, and behave. It is still not healthy for me all the time. So I still open up to you in certain ways. And I said to him, saying, there's definitely clearly something that is different about your behaviors that I don't believe that you've investigated. And he acknowledged that he hadn't. And he even acknowledged that he's actually writing a book that he knows that there's something different, and he's trying to write a book to help other people with that. And I said to him, but wait, how are you going to help other people that have your struggles if you haven't fully made the steps to understand yourself completely either? So he heard that and being able to communicate that. And I said to him, Dad, not only is this a great conversation, but if there's one thing that you can give me to make us have a really big jump start in kickstarting a positive relationship moving forward and growth, it would be, let's go to the doctors, but not just you go. I want to go with you because it'll be healing for me. It'll be healing for you. I can find ways to understand and work with you, and you might be able to find ways to understand and work with yourself and others better. And so I was just calling him out. I said everything that I've been holding on to for, over 2 decades. And it just happened. I told him about my new job, and I said, oh, shoot, I got to go. I'm about to be on a podcast. And here we are.
Wow. So what led you, I mean, this is incredible, Jake. What led you to this very, important and difficult conversation was just the fact you have this job coming up and you just wanted to inform him?
Well, I think it's 2 parts. Yeah, the job was coming up. He did something that upset me a month and a half ago, which is where I pulled back again.
Right.
And, the reality is that until this job came up, there's just been a lot going on in my world, in my life. I haven't had the emotional bandwidth to go down this conversation with him where I didn't feel strong and powerful. And it's not about me holding power over him. It's about me feeling empowered and mentally capable to even open that jar to like go, or that can of worms to go in. I just was on, I would say I was just cruising. I was on cruise control, and I needed to be able to have this conversation in a place where I felt self-confident, strong, and that if they were to come back, I was able to push back. And an example is that it's like, well, I really appreciate those things, but I want to tell you, we did have a positive relationship. I remember when you were just a baby and I'd rock you, and I stopped him mid-conversation. I said, that's great. I don't want to hear it, because those are your perspectives of your memories of how you understand our relationship. That's not going to change or undo how I understand our relationship. My memories are very different than yours. Doesn't mean that yours aren't valid, but my memories are valid. And so if you want to work with me on our relationship, you need to accept and acknowledge and work with the fact that we have different histories in the same story.
Yeah, what an important point. And I love, number one, that you kind of had to acknowledge that you wanted to feel like you were in a good place, you were on solid ground to be able to address these issues, because often we have to be.
Yeah.
When we set ourselves up, when we're too vulnerable, sometimes someone can knock us down with their double talk and this and that. But the other thing is, you didn't accept his reality. You said, I have my reality, and it was different. I experienced things differently than you did. Yeah, and you actually pushed back, which I'm not amazed, but I'm thrilled to hear that he listened to you, and that to me is probably the most exciting thing.
It was really wonderful. And, you knowing his behaviors over the years, like, you don't know how somebody like in this position is going to react. And so, you kind of build up that wall expecting the worst. But I think that's what's so great is that when you feel powerful in your position, you can explain and express yourself in a way that's clear-headed. And that's where you want to be when you have these conversations, because you need to come into it without doubt in your experience and your need to express yourself. Otherwise, if you start falling backwards and going, well, maybe they have a point. No, you're here to tell your truth. And so all I was doing was saying, your perspective isn't wrong. I wasn't questioning his reality. I was saying, but this is mine. I'm confident in how I feel about it. And this is why I need to know why I'm asking the things I need from you for us to be successful.
How do you feel right now?
I feel great. And I honestly feel great that this is happening right now, because it's exactly the concept of this podcast. And I went, oh man, I just had an aha moment, breakthrough moment after 20 something years. And I'm immediately getting to share with people tuning in that hopefully can hear that and get to the point of feeling their power. And if that adds to you, the listeners, I say, thank you for tuning in today.
Yeah, no, I think this is incredibly important, because you're coming off, or you're in the wake of a very important conversation that happens. And I think sometimes if we're lucky enough to have that conversation, especially with the person who did cause us trauma when we were young, or one of the people, if we're able to have that conversation in a direct and clear way, which you did, and you said what your truth was, then it can be extremely healing. So I'm incredibly thrilled for you.
Thank you. Me too.
And it's interesting because why I wanted you on to talk is because of your expertise, but this just goes to show that every expert has a life, a personal life that very much colors their experience and what leads them into that field.
Absolutely. I think that, we are in a society that is still very focused on degree and pedigree.
Yes.
And I cannot say that the work that I do is without a doubt influenced by my identities and my life experience. And it not only has influenced my career, but it makes me better at my career. And so I really hope, not just for myself, but people that aren't in fields that are diversity, inclusion, and belonging, um, that when you finally lean into you, and because we all know that experience, going to a job and putting on the work persona, you know, there's a part of ourselves that we have to close ourselves off to. Now, I know I can make a joke here and there that's inappropriate. I definitely got to keep certain things in check. But with that being said, it's important to really go, okay, but what are the parts of me that make me stronger, and I can bring that with me at work?
Well, that's really great because you do have a lot of strength. And by the way, your humor is one of the things I like most about you. But I do understand not everyone takes the same humor the same way. So,
Yeah,
um,
I piss a lot of people off with my humor. So yeah.
well, I guess, most good comedians do. Um, so let's talk about things because I wanted to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion just because it's kind of been a hot button in society. And you've been in it for a long time. You're no newbie to this. You've been in it a long time. You have an expertise in this. You also live it as somebody who has a diverse identity. So tell me what led you into the field in the first place.
Yeah, I think first off, that answer is it happened on chance because, you know, technically speaking, this field was actually created in the 1960s, but it really didn't get adoption in mainstream companies, at least in the United States, till about, I would say, 2013 is where you started hearing the words being thrown around, and and teams are popping up. And I've been in tech, so those are one of the first companies to sort of adopt new trends. And at the time, I was working at Lyft headquarters. There was no conversation about this when I was in university, and so there were I joined my friend, and we started the first ERG, which is an employee resource group. For those that are tuning in and don't know what those are like
Mm,
the social clubs, the people that share your identity within the organization, places where you get funding from the companies to put on cultural celebrations throughout the year. If maybe help the business to get more people like you into the organization, making people feel safe and heard based on their experiences and how that correlates to what's going on in the world, focusing on things like pay equity, promotion equity, all the things. And so when I was at Lyft in around the year 2013, was that we were starting an ERG for LGBTQIA. And at the same time, I was starting with my friend who was really taking the charge on it. But there were moments that like I really am proud of, like I stepped in. If we remember the shooting that happened in Orlando,
yes.
and it was really, really awful. And that's a great example of when you have an ERG in an organization come together, where you say, everybody meet us in this room. We're going to help you. We know you're having a hard day at work today. We're just creating a space for you to talk. What do you need? We can be your advocates to the leadership, so we can make sure that you feel really supported right now, because that was a scary thing. And so when that happened, we went into this meeting, and I wasn't even going to be the one to lead the conversation. And it was actually supposed to be my manager, but my manager was so upset by everything, and everybody else was so upset by everything. There was one person to my left saying, my birthday was the night of the shooting. And a year ago, because I'm from this town, I was at this club, and I
Oh
was
my.
supposed to go there this year for my birthday again. So they were supposed to be there. So
Oh
the
my.
room, the experiences were just wild.
This
And
is Pulse nightclub. This is just for anyone
yeah,
watching. Yeah, the Pulse nightclub in Orlando.
yeah. And so my manager was trying to lead it, couldn't. And I would say because of the things you've heard about already with my disability and my family stuff and my dad, I think it's influenced me a lot. And in moments of crises, because I guess I've been through a lot of crises in my life, I'm really good at crisis management. And I stepped up and I led that conversation, and I was able to really bring people to you know, here we are, be present, express your feelings. What do you need? What do you want? Just a space. And, and that was really wonderful. And I started taking on more projects like that at the company, really looking at data and saying, what are we seeing inside and outside the company that we can do, writing policies, etc. And when I started to become good at that, when I left in 2016, um, and so that was what, 2014, not 2013, I think I said. In 2016, when I left, I had a bunch of companies like had already seen some of my work. They were reaching out to me for consulting, and I started doing that. And I just somehow became like a full-time consultant by chance. And I did that for many years, for about 6 years. It would have been shorter, but then things got a little weird with pandemic. Um, and um, and so I was doing that, but I ultimately decided, I'm a people person. I need to be around people. And so at this point, these years and changes, um, it was adopted, and now there was a team in every organization. And I was just doing consulting on the side, and companies were like, well, we're not going to start a team. Let's get a consultant. But then there were companies that were getting the teams. And so it ended up being great for me where I came in full time. And my next company, which was Snap, and Snap was wonderful until we had big giant last 2 years of tech layoffs and the defunding of DEI. Um, and that is really telling us like where we are currently.
Let's get to it right now, because that's what I really want to get to, because what is happening in our world, the DEI, which was an incredible thing, and what an advancement within professional fields, is now under attack. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So at a baseline, I think we can all agree that if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably all going to agree that, hey, we care about people and their identities and their mental health. And that's really at its core. I think for so long, HR companies, it's, no secret anymore. HR, it's like the best marketing ploy where HR has been labeled as human relations, but we're hearing articles and stories all the time of where it's been protecting more the company than the people. That isn't necessarily saying that HR doesn't want to help the people, but then because of literally potentially old laws, even HR's hands get tied on how they're allowed to address an issue. So the addition of DEI has been a great contribution to working in functions in ways and procedures that HR is often limited to. And so I do want to say that, like, it's not that HR is the devil. It's that there's just things that, are yesteryear ways of building those programs. And so DEI has been an evolution in HR that, is, I think, a great example of, oh, HR is doing better. The problem is that with DEI, it really struggles with the ROI, which is return on investment. And ROI is, no matter what you say, like, I think we can all agree, we want people to feel included. We want people to feel safe. We want people to be happy at work, and we want work to be equitable. In short, that sounds great. But when you're looking at a company and you're looking at the bottom line, which is dollar signs, being able to, you want to be able to pay for everybody's, homes and lunches, and make sure that they can work and get paid. But when the company has to make decisions and you have to say, well, we need to still pay at least, 50% of our workforce, there has to be cuts. And the cuts often go to teams that are not able to show the return on investment. And that is a big struggle right now, I think, for DEI. And in addition to that, we have to acknowledge the political stance of both the right and the left, and what's been happening not only in the United States, but what we're really seeing around the world with global protests almost weekly, it feels like now. Government, flipping completely on the political spectrum after another election period. This isn't just unique to the United States right now.
Poland just had a big switch in their they went from right wing to far more moderate, and it really caused a big switch within that society just in December. So you're exactly, yeah, it's happening all over.
It's happening all over. Maybe it's, I think it's globalization. I think it's our access to seeing things in the world on social media in the palms of our hands. People are knowing what's out there. And so, the pendulum swings really far left, like, oh, they have that there. We want that too. But then what happens is you have this conservative base that is so used to things going a certain way that they come in and they fight really hard to be like, this is not the lifestyle that we were raised in and what we want to get rid of. So we're going to fight to keep our own. And so now you have more than ever more polarized thinking on the
Yeah.
right and the left than ever before. And it's the sad thing is that we're really at this moment in time, we've lost diplomacy. There's no diplomacy anymore because everyone is just trying to win for their side, not win for the people.
And this seems antithetical to diversity, equity, and inclusion, because really what that is about expanding thinking, expanding populations, including people, being able to bring people in and talk about differences, not make everyone march in exactly the same lockstep, and celebrating those differences people bring. But if we are narrowing, that's going to actually push out people, and that would be my concern.
I think what it really comes down to of the way that I see things in the work that I do versus the opposition to the work that I do
Uh-huh.
is in my side of things, I don't understand your thinking. I don't believe in, certain ways that you live your life, but I'm going to defend for you to be able to be that person as
Mm-hmm.
long as you're respectful and kind and not hurting people and showing up as you are. The other side, which I often find the frustrating argument when their biggest thing is liberties and protecting our liberties and all this stuff. It's liberties to the definition of what they define is what people deserve. And so what you have is I know the people that I would fight for wouldn't be fighting for me and my identities. And in fact, alternatively work against them after, extremely like adamantly work against it. They work very hard against it.
And can we talk about that? If you don't mind, let's talk about your identities, because your identities uh, have been under attack. I mean, recently, um, if you don't mind me saying, the LGBTQI population, of which I'm a member, of course, the being a wheelchair user, disability rights continually overlooked or pushed aside, and being, if you don't mind me saying, Jewish, and
Yeah.
of the anti-Semitism we've experienced in this world has been shocking. Maybe not shocking to you, but shocking to me to see the amount of it out there.
Yeah, it's true, and I'll tell you a few things. Look, LGBTQIA, it's pretty consistent in the media, and it has been, I think, for the last 50 years. Um, so we to me, there's less to talk about that unless we relate it to my experiences and my
Mm-hmm.
relationship to being disabled and gay and those worlds intersecting.
The intersectionality of the
Yeah.
three identities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Disabilities, 100%. It is not only often left off of conversations, but it's often not really addressed properly in the realm of DEI to the point that companies are starting their own full departments just on accessibility and disability inclusion that has a separation between DEI. Uh, and I think that's problematic, in the sense that yes, accessibility is more focused on product or marketing, but in a lot of ways it can be in two different worlds. It can exist everywhere, which is one of the things about diversity and inclusion. Like diversity and inclusion work isn't just dependent on the team that's doing it. We are tooling people up so they can be better at doing themselves on their own jobs. Everybody should be doing this work. So, yes, disability is often left out. And the Jewish thing, which my famous joke is I once went viral in 2016, which is how you and I connected. And it was, it starts off, wheelchair, gay, Jewish, terrible for 1942 Germany, but perfect for your 2016 roommate. And I went viral for that, trying to find a wheelchair accessible home in San Francisco that was affordable and accessible, often two things that do not coexist. And so you laughed at that. That's how we became friends. Um, but with that being said, um, that joke is funny in a lot of ways because also I think it's really easy to go, oh, like Jews haven't had it that bad since like 80 years ago, or this and that. And the truth is that I may joke about it. There's statistically, Jews are one of the highest, most attacked groups in the United States, not just now, but they've been for years. But my friends and I have been saying that in our lifetime, we are feeling the most sort of understanding of what our grandparents and our great grandparents were probably feeling leading up to the Holocaust, because we are seeing people say things about us not we shouldn't be existing. I live in New York now. I'm seeing stores and restaurants that are owned by Jewish people be ransacked. Um, my friends and I have been called the word kike, which is our version of a really derogatory word for our people. Um, I've had people remove me on social media, people that really I trust and value. And I, as a diversity inclusion person, with this war going on, have been very cognizant of what I've been posting. In fact, I only feel, and I kind of am not saying I'm not justifying it, but I'm saying there's only been one post that I believe was like maybe shouldn't have posted that because I did it in a moment of emotion. And again, it was humor, and humor can toe the line. But what I will say is it's been hard, and when people go, well, I don't want to talk to you about the war that's going on. I don't want this. I'm like, okay, first off, I am not the Israeli government. Palestinians and Arabs, they are not Hamas. But I was like, so I was like, you can say they're not mutually exclusive. You can have your feelings on the Israeli government, you can have your feelings on Hamas, but we can all say that we want to see, safety and prosperity for civilians. And I don't think if you talk to the majority of Jews, they're going to agree with exactly that. In fact, up until this war, the Israeli people were out on the streets protesting their government the last year, wanting a more liberal government.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting that the moment this has happened, a horrible attack on October 7th, you have found an egregious attack on my people. With we're talking, I'm not talking physical attacks. I'm talking on propaganda and the ways that we're talking about the Jewish people. And I don't want to see that for Jews. I don't want to see that for Palestinians. I don't want to see that for any BIPOC related individual. That we need to go through the world knowing that honestly, there are historians that know everything about a thing, but 99.9999% of us, we are not historians. Not everyone knows history. So the best we can do is listen and be supportive. And being supportive does not mean denouncing an entire population of people. Being supportive is, I'm really passionate. I don't believe this should be happening. For instance, the harmful, horrible attacks on Gaza and civilians. I need to learn more about what's happened with the Jewish side too, because this story is intertwined for millennia. And so with the history of millennia, I guarantee you that most people are quoting sound bites. And that's not just for the Gazan side. That's my side too, where I say, well, have you been learning about the Gazan side? And so it goes both ways as allies.
No, I think it's a good point, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that perspective, because I think a lot of times we get so locked in these polarization, as you said earlier, that people stop seeing clearly and they stop listening. They just attack. I think social media and the way it's presented and what people are doing to get clicks and being outraged constantly and going to polarization is causing so much division in our society, when one of my personal goals is to have us come together. And that's the whole point of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, that's why I think your voice is so important.
Back in the day, the Beatles, they were changing the world, and the Beatles were changing the world because they had a message, and that message would get people together. Hearing that message coming out of these, the Vietnam War, and all these different things where, we're like, what we've been doing is wrong, and we just need to really practice these words. And it impacted a generation. There is a generation of people where they didn't have social media, but they had music, and music with a good intention.
I mean, one of the good things about getting older, I will say, for me, is that I feel more and more there's more I don't know. I can see how much I don't know, and that's been incredible because that makes my hunger to learn more and to listen more much bigger. And I think, that's one of the blessings of getting older, perhaps.
Not only is it a blessing, but when you feel you can let down your guard to not be the smartest person in the room,
Yeah.
where you're not competing with individuals, you become more malleable and open-minded to listening. And it ends up allowing you to have conversations with people that you would never have normally had a conversation with. And often what I find when I have people in conversations that, let's for example, are on the complete opposite side of the political party and we're having a conversation, we're talking about the same things, but there's just little differences like, oh, that's why you're saying this. Well, would you be okay with this happening if we just changed this little thing? And so that's that diplomacy that I crave again.
Well, and it's certainly a solution that you're a part of. And, I feel like I could talk with you for hours about this because we've only scratched the surface. And, very unfortunately, we've come to the end of the time of the podcast, which is unfortunate because I think there is so much more to say and so much more for you to share. For people who want to get in touch with you, what would be the way they can do that, Jake?
Great question. Well, if you're looking to be in touch with me professionally, LinkedIn, Jake Hytken. My last name is Hytken. If you want to get in touch with me on my social media, it's I rolled up like this, just like the Beyonce song, but I rolled up like this. Reach out, say hello, tweet, share, hey, I'm trying to brand myself too, because guess what? I am so for monopolizing off my pain. Let's do it.
Thank you for sharing not only your expertise and personal experience, but what happened with you just before we got on the phone. I don't even know what to say because this shows that healing can happen at any time and any place. We just happen to have it right before our podcast.
Oh, pretty wild. And Greg, for all the listeners today, I think it's important to know that this didn't just, it happened today, but it was, 20 something years in the making.
There you go.
And that doesn't mean just because I had this conversation today, doesn't mean that I may regress, I may pull away, our relationship still may flounder. But what it really means is that you take wins where you can, and you give grace to yourself where there are moments where it's just, we're living it in again, because the world is always going to throw things at you. And so just go with it and have good friends, good family, and be willing to be vulnerable. Find those people in your life that you can be vulnerable with and have that support.
Wow. Incredibly valuable advice. I mean, I'm floored. So thank you, Jake. I really appreciate it. Incredibly profound.
Thank you, Greg, so much for having me today. And thank you for all the listeners who stayed through this entire time.
Thank you. And we'll be back with more in further shows. But yeah, please get in touch with Jake because he has so much more to give. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Just Healing. Join us for new episodes throughout 2024 where we continue to spread the message of hope and healing, and welcome Season 2's final co-host, Jace Barron. And remember, you are worthy, and trauma doesn't define us, and healing is a collective journey. This podcast is produced by Dr. Deborah and myself, Dr. Greg Cason, in collaboration with Men Healing, a national nonprofit dedicated to helping provide accessible resources and community for any male or masculine identifying individual who has experienced sexual harm. Men Healing aims to help heal, inspire, and break isolation for survivors. You can donate, check out our healing events, videos, and other resources at menhealing.org. If you or someone you know has been a victim of sexual harm and you need to talk with someone, RAIN can help. Call their National Sexual Assault Hotline to speak with a trained staff member who can provide you with confidential crisis support. It's free, confidential, and 24/7. Call 1-800-656-4673 or visit hotline.rain.org. That's RAIN spelled RAINN.